Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Today we're going to be working on some free motion quilting designs, and we're going to do it a little bit different than normal. Normally we show you a new stencil that you can use from Full Line Stencil. Today I'm going to show you a couple of them because we're going to be using them to mark grids on our designs. This is great for if you want to make things a uniform size, if you want to just have a uniform grid with straight line quilting and you just want to mark that somehow so you've got something to follow along with. Or in this case, I'm going to show you how you can create several different cool border designs, get them all nice and uniform in size by being able to mark with a grid that's going to go away. Let's get started. So Full Line Stencil makes several gridded designs like this one. This is a 2-inch grid. It's the one that we're going to be opening up and using today. It's just nice straight lines that we can use to mark on our fabric. So that way we can use that to have some lines to follow with. There's also a 1-inch grid, so that's great if you want it to be a little bit smaller. And then they also have a nice 1-inch grid that is, instead of just being straight lines, it's the actual grid. This is great if you are a hand quilter and you want to do some nice cross hatching, or if you just want to have a nice good guide so you can kind of keep everything as a uniform size. And then there's also a 1-inch grid on point. This is really a very traditional quilting design, but it also looks really good sometimes in modern quilts as well. And this way you can line everything up, and then you can line your sides up and keep that nice and even as you go. And then you can either do it on your walking foot or your long arm and just go across. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the 2-inch grid. I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna use that today. Now, as always, all the products I'm using today are listed in the video description down below. You can get all of this at our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. If you enjoyed the free video tutorials and you've got a project that you want to give a go, a great way to support us and say thanks for giving you free videos every week is to get the supplies from us. So what I've done here is I've just strip pieced a bunch of 2.5-inch strips together. That way they are 2 inches finished, which is going to be the same width as this piece here. And that's going to allow me to practice several different border designs without having to do it on an actual quilt. It's a good way to practice and really hone your free motion quilting skills before you do it on the real thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line this up, and I'm kind of lining this cross up with that top edge of my fabric. I want it to be nice and straight, so that way it's going straight across. And you can kind of see it's nice and perpendicular to my seam lines. And you can be even more specific if you want when you're working on this, but this is looking pretty good, especially for a test. Now I'm going to use my pounce pad, and we go over this every time. We've got several other videos, but what you're going to do is you're going to pop this top off. It's like a bank topper from when you were a kid. Fill it all the way to the top with whatever chalk you choose. It comes in pink, blue, and white. The white you can iron off. The pink and the blue you have to brush or wipe off with a damp cloth. The pigment will heat set. Then you're going to bang it against a hard surface 50 times. And like you're ticked at someone, you're getting your aggression out. And then that will let the chalk settle in. So that way it's nice and saturated in the cloth applicator underneath. And that's the first time you're doing it. You're going to repeat that and do that twice. When you're just refilling, you can just do it the 50 times and you're good to go. This one will give a little bit of a bang, and then we'll be ready to go because this one has already been primed many times. All right, so now we've got it nicely, freshly saturated. So I'm going to just go ahead and put my fingers here to kind of hold it nice and steady and just swipe up across those lines. And then just repeat going across. Let's take a peek and make sure that everything went through okay. Looks like we need to bang it a little more. That is looking much better. Let's check the other side. You always kind of want to lift up just a little bit in the corners, because if you fully pull it off, it's hard to get it exactly in the right spot again. So if you just kind of take a peek in the corners, that's the best. All right, so now we need to line this up, and there's a couple of different ways to line it up. First, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep this line coming all the way down. So what I'm gonna do is put my fingernails on where those plus signs are, and I'm going to get it lined up with the one above it. And when you are doing this at home, you can actually see through enough to see the line. Like I can see that the line is extending here and that it's nice and straight. I don't think that's gonna pick up on the camera, but you can definitely see through it when you are at home, as long as you're in a well-lit room. All right, so now that I've got that, we're gonna go ahead and brush the chalk over. Check again, and that is transferred really well, and the lines are very straight. So first what I'm gonna do is I'm going to line it up so that way I can see that I'm on top of the lines below. So again, I can really kind of see through here and tell that I'm on where I was before. And you can also line up those pluses and see that you are where you should be. So I can tell from the top and the bottom that I'm nice in alignment. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark the remaining lines on my little test piece here. Give a little peek, and we're good. And then mark it all the way down too. All right, so now we've got nice marked lines. So now we're gonna practice a couple of different free motion quilting stitches, and they're all really simple to do and pretty easy. And it will just give you some things in your wheelhouse that you can do for borders. And this is, again, a really great stencil to use. If you were just doing, you know, a single border, you could easily just line that plus up with the edge of your seam, like I have here, and then you just mark that little bit, and then, you know, you can easily do uniform designs. So let's get going. So you guys can see it here. I'm gonna mark the design out with a friction gel pen first. This is a really good thing to practice on paper first before you do it on fabric, rather than marking it on your fabric. But you can always give that a go too if you want. First, I'm just gonna do a really simple loop wide circle, and then we're gonna build on that and do a couple of different variations. You're gonna start over here, and you're gonna come and try and fill the entire area. And go along. And then you're going to come to the center, fill the whole area, and go around, and you're going to repeat. Just like in all these videos, I'm wearing my machiner's quilting gloves. They've got little grips on the fingertips, which help me move the fabric around very easily. And also, I'm going to quilt, normally I would quilt like this, but I'm going to quilt with one hand to the side so that you can see on the camera. So when you're doing it, try to hold your hands like this. I'm going to start the row like I always do by bringing my needle down and back up again. And then I just grab that top thread, and it's going to pull my bobbin thread up to the top. So I can pull that out. Then you don't get a thread nest on the bottom. It's not super critical for a practice piece like this one, but it's really very a good habit to get into, because you definitely want to be doing that when you are working for real. All right, so I'm laying this down so that the marked side is not going to be scraping against my body. I don't want that chalk to come off. So now I'm just going to start doing that large loop, going around, and just trying to keep it nice and uniform. All right. So like I said, I don't like to draw too much first, because I usually am a better quilter than I am at drawing, and I can usually quilt a better circle than I can draw. So I'm getting a little, like, you know, it's messy with my mind. All right, travel over. So I'm about midway through. Start making that circle. Always try to stop when you're not like mid-circle, because that will be much easier to get going again. And not have it look like you made a mistake. so that is looking okay. The big circles are not my favorite because when I'm working on a machine that size, it's a lot easier for me to work small than it is to work on larger things, and you can really tell when something's off. So like this one here looks more like an alien head than a circle. So I'm going to show you my next design that I think is actually easier, even though we're adding a couple of elements. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a double loop-de-loop. So we're still going to start at the bottom. So we're going to come in and do one loop and then make it bigger. And then come up and do the next little loop at the bottom. And then you're just going to keep transferring where that first little loop is, whether it's at the top or the bottom. And just keep going on. So your transfer is actually going to happen in the middle here. And that, I know it's a little hard to tell with the overhead camera here. It's not showing up as best as I would like it. But this is a lot easier for me to get going well and look good from piece to piece than just that plain circle. But that plain circle is good to start with just to get the motion down of going round and round. All right, so we're going to come in and first do that little loop. And then we're going to surround it with another larger loop that fills that circle a little better. Then we're going to cross to the other side with a little loop on the top of that now, instead of the bottom. Do our little loop, do our bigger loop, cross over, heading back down to the bottom of that strip, little loop, and our bigger loop. Like I said, I find this a lot easier to do than the big one because you don't want it to be perfectly uniform circles. That's really challenging to do if you're not a computer. So as you can see, it's still the same design. We're still doing a loop-de-loop circle, but this one just looks a lot better because it's not supposed to be perfectly uniform. Again, you're never going to complete a perfect circle unless you use rulers and templates. This one I feel is much more versatile, but it's good to start with this one so you can kind of get the motion of going in circles. We're going to do another one that uses loops, and then we'll move on to some straight line designs. And this one, I kind of like to call it Flight of the Bumblebee because it's kind of all over the place. I really love it as a design. All right, so I'm going to start down at the bottom here. And I'm going to come up to the top and do a little loop. And then come down to the bottom and do a little loop. And you're just going to kind of keep, actually, let's move it here. Let's move the little loop here. And then we can always do our little loop at the bottom. And basically we're doing it in the middles. So we're always going to do one right in the middle and then one right where that line crosses over. All right, so we're going to do that first little loop. Then we're going to travel down and do our second little loop so that it's crossing right over that line. We're going to make our way back up to the middle, do another little loop, and then head back down, and again do another little loop right on that line. Just keep repeating that process as you work your way across. Need to stop and reposition your hands, it's best to do it at the very bottom of a loop because you're already going to be changing directions at that point, so it's really easy to get started without making it look like you have screwed up a curve. So super cute, super fun, a real nice whimsical design that can add a little fun to your borders. And again, you can change the scale up to fit whatever you need. This is just a good one to go practice on. All right, now we're going to move on to some square and straight line designs. So if you have something that you want to be more angled and geometric, you can definitely do that with this. So first we're going to start by making a maze. So we're going to come in, go up, over, down, in, And you can do this as many times as you want, but when you're done, you're just going to come over and then you're going to work your way back out of that maze until you come over. And the idea is to just kind of fill the space evenly across each one so that you're generally getting your square box to be about the same size. Like ideally, I maybe would have come over a little bit more here before I came in when I was going there, but you kind of get the hang of it. But the big part is that you've got these nice guides. They're kind of fading a little bit because we've been working with it for a little while, but you can see here there's the chalk lines right there, and we're just fitting our boxes right in between. Alright, so I'm just working my way around the outside of that box first. And it doesn't matter if you're perfectly straight. If you want it to be perfectly straight, you can use ruler work to do it. It's a totally different skill. We've got some videos on that as well. I'm working my way to the center of that box. And I'm kind of pausing a little bit at each corner so that I take a couple of stitches in place. That will help make sure that I've got really nice sharp corners as opposed to some rounded edges. All right, so I'm going to go about a 1/4 inch away from where the edge of that block is, so that way I can fill that space nice and evenly. And I'm going to travel all the way to the edge of the next block where that guide is. Come up and keep filling in. Now, if you're at a point where you need to stop to reposition your hands, do it when you're at a point, because that's going to be really easy to stop and come out of it and really make it look very nice. So like here, I'm going to stop. I'm going to position my hands down a little further so that I'll have control when I move on to the next bit. So that's a nice, fun angular design, perfect for modern quilts or boys' quilts or anything in which it's very, you know, not whimsical. This one you can see I messed up my pattern a little bit. No big deal. It's all kind of fills the space evenly, so it still looks good, still looks planned, it still looks nice and uniform in the quilting, which is what we want. Okay, next we're going to do a design that would actually work best with ruler work, but we're going to show you how to do it with your free motion quilting as well. So if you're not ready to go to ruler work, you don't want to invest in the tools because you do have to get a special foot and rulers to do it. Here's a way to do it. It's not going to look as sharp and crisp, but it still is going to be a very cool border design. What we're going to do is we're going to start at the bottom and then we're going to aim for the middle. And then just keep coming down. So we can just keep going back and forth from the middle to down. And you can eyeball this, or you could also measure and make marks. So you could do like little hash marks in the center, and you could just aim for those hash marks. And that is a totally fine way to do it as well. All right, so we're just gonna travel as straight as we can. And then when we hit that tip, we're going to pause, stitch in place a couple of stitches to get that nice sharp point, and then head back down to the next bit. Pause, change directions. The idea is to try to keep your line as straight as it can be, because that's what's going to create the look of that triangle. Again, this is better to do with a ruler foot and ruler work. You're going to have much more accurate results. But if you're not ready to take that on, you don't want to invest in that foot, then this is a good alternative for now. And we do have videos on ruler work. We can link that below. It's in the playlist on Quilting the Quilt that we have. And you can check that out if that's something you're interested in doing. Again, this is going to look a lot better, a lot more uniform if you use ruler work to do this, but it's a totally fine and acceptable alternative if you're not ready to invest in those tools. All right, I'm going to show you one more that is kind of a combination of straight line and curved designs for our last option for your borders. So for this one, I'm just going to do a straight line up and then turn. And I'm just going to try to keep about equal amounts in between so I can get about 3 of those little fingers in each one of these. And just keep going up and down, like that. And again, I was able to get 1, 2, 3, and then there's your line, and the curve is happening on the bottom of that. So I'm just going to try to follow that pattern. Just going to go back and forth. Obviously, if this were a real thing, I wouldn't be coming all the way to the edge because there would be a seam line here, but we're just going to go to the edge and sort of create those little curved lines as we go along. It's a real fun border design. You can make it as dense or as wide as you want, and you can customize really any of these designs to fit what you need, but it's a nice, good practice piece and a good way to use those grids to help give you better and more uniform quilting, especially in those borders. All right, so I'm just going to do that straight line over, and then once I get close to the edge, just round the curve. And then just keep repeating that, going back and forth, trying to keep about equal distance so that I can get about 3 tips per 2-inch strip. So that turned out pretty fun. We've got really nice, uniformly spaced, just little lines with loops going back and forth. Again, they don't have to be perfect. Your quilts, you're not a machine. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it is nice when you can create a uniform look to your designs, and using those grids are a great way to start because we were able to create some nice uniform swoops going up and down, some uniform triangles, uniformly sized squares, loop-de-loops, and the circles. So the circles, never gonna be perfect, but it's a good building block so you can start creating fun designs like this. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. I hope it's given you lots of great ideas for what you can do with your border designs. Again, if you want to get the grid, we have multiple sizes and we've got links to that all below. And so you can use it on your next border in order to create nice uniformly sized designs, or even just to practice on a piece like this. It's, you know, you could easily just use your scraps and have some fun with this and see how it turns out. Thanks so much for following along. You can get all the supplies for today's video over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Again, if you like our free videos, you see a project you want to try, a great way to say thanks is to support us and buy the supplies from us. Thanks so much, and until next week, happy quilting.